everyone, Therese here. Welcome to a new monthly bullet journal plan with me video. I hope you've been doing well. If you're looking for something to spark your creativity this year, you are in the right channel. So yeah, what is up? I didn't make setups for the past couple months. I'm gonna share what happened in a moment. But right now, let's just start with my June 2025 bullet journal setup. I'm still using my Lila Journals dot grid notebook, and if you need more themes or spread ideas for June, I have a lot of yearly and monthly videos on the channel, so feel free to check them out. I will be doing some paintings like always, and I will be using gouache instead of watercolors. I have been avoiding this medium for a long time, but here we go. When it comes to the paint brushes, you don't need anything fancy. I'm mostly using my old paint brushes because the bristles can get worked a lot due to the consistency of the paint. I just picked the right shapes or kind depending on the illustration I want to go for. So we have a round brush, detail brush, and filbert brush. I will also be using a few different sizes later as we go through the process, but if you need the specific brushes or supplies, they will be listed on the description box below. I'm using this acrylic as my palette. It's not actually meant for painting, but I don't have any other use for it, so yeah, it's good. Sometimes I use a ceramic or disposable plate, so anything that's available for you, go for it. My monthly setups are always themed and starts with a cover illustration, so that's the first thing we will be doing. The theme I chose for June is Summer Barn, and we're putting this yellow deep color on our palette and mix it with water until it creates a soupy consistency using our large filbert brush. With the same brush, we're going to apply and spread this on our page as the underpainting color to help me with the warm tone that I'm going for. I did not really understand the point of underpainting before, so I never used this technique because I don't want to mess it up and do it all over again. But digital drawing helped me understand it in some way. So underpainting has several advantages over working from a plain canvas. Comparing colors to a white background is very different from the coloring of the final painting. So I tried this on digital drawing. I always start with the background color that I want before I draw the illustration, and when I finish and try to change the background to plain white, for example, the illustration looks a lot better with the initial background color. I will have another example of this later where there's no underpainting so we can see the difference. But right now we are painting a red barn using a mix of flame red and a bit of violet. I'm using gouache from Holbein. Is that right? Yeah, Holbein. And these colors may have different names from other brands, but you can use any gouache paint that you own and play around with other colors. We're using number 6 round brush to paint the red parts. We also have light reflecting here, so I'm going to lighten the left side a bit by adding white to the mix. I only got to do it in the last painting, but you can actually just paint the red parts in opaque consistency and leave areas where the highlights are and just blend them with the underpainting. Then we move to the roof. We are going to mute the undertone a bit by adding white with a hint of red before going with this dark blue using Prussian blue and black, which we're just applying around the edges of each section. So we're kind of blending them together but still leaving some streaks to show textures of the wood. And don't forget the little dormer window on the roof. I didn't paint window frames though, but it's a dormer window, okay. And we also paint the white lines around. Next, we are adding some shadows on the walls by mixing violet to our flame red and apply this on the edges and corners near the roof and more on the right side where there's little light. After that, we are painting the small details like the windows and doors with white and dark red. Since it's a small barn painting, we are gonna use a detail brush to paint these as thin as we can. Don't worry if you make a mistake, you can always cover it up because of the opaque qualities of gouache. Then, using the dark red, we are painting these little vertical strokes for the texture of our wooden walls. Okay, our next step is to paint the grassland. We are using lemon yellow, emerald green, yellow deep, and red to create warm green tone, or more like an olive green. And even if you don't put too much yellow in the mix, I think the underpainting helps with that too. So using a small filbert brush, we are just applying this to some areas while keeping some parts of the underpainting visible. We are trying to achieve like a summer afternoon time in the barn vibes. And at this stage, it's normal for the paint to look messy. It will look fine once they dry, so yeah, don't worry about it. There's also gonna be a meadow here and a fence, but we work on the meadows first by painting a darker shade of our green mix earlier around here. I'm trying to not paint over the fence sketch so I can have a guide where I plan to paint it. Also, this way we don't need to use a lot of paint. In the past, I used to paint the whole meadow even though I will be painting another element on the foreground. I wasted a lot of paint back then. So here, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just painting the parts that are visible. We are painting the base of the grasses around the fence that are facing towards us using burnt umber and a bit of black since the sun or light is reflecting from the far left. We are painting the base of the grasses around the fence that are facing towards us using burnt umber and a bit of black since the sun or light is reflecting from the far left. It's also up to you where you want your light to reflect from. If it's from the far right or from the front, you will have a different placement of the shadows. We also have tall grasses around the barn and trees behind, and the shadows are quite prominent here, so I used a bit more black on the section close to the ground and layer with the lighter shades. We are doing this with a loose technique, and we also want to create leaf-like texture on the edges by painting little dots using a tapping motion. I forgot to do the clouds, by the way. It has to be behind the barn and trees, but it's okay whichever part you want to go first, as long as you can redo the parts that you may accidentally paint over. So we are using white, a hint of red and blue, and kind of blend them together with a damp brush. But I'm placing the darker blue shade close to the roof of the barn and the part with a tinge of red close to the trees. Next are some bushes on the left hand side. We have a green bush and the other one more of a golden color similar to the tree. And we're just adding more depth to these by adding shadows. Up next is our fence. We are painting the base with a white paint and mark the dimension using gray. I think I was using the one I used for the clouds, so there was a blue tinge here, making it cool toned, but that's okay. We're gonna be using dark brown and black to paint the details and textures. And I also used some yellow ochre when I think I covered the whole fence too much with the dark brown. So I'm making sure there's still some light areas showing up for the highlights. But like I said earlier, you can always go back to areas you accidentally cover and repaint them again with the right color. After that, we can add some grasses on the meadows. We have dark green, yellowish brown, brown red, and white with a hint of green. I'm basically picking colors that will show up on top of the dark background. Even with the grasses, I start with the darker shade first and paint over the next lighter shade. You can also paint smaller ones on the front of the fence with a few clusters here and there. I'm using the same detail brush, and you want to put a very light pressure on your hand to paint thin grasses starting from the bottom going up. You can also paint them in different directions so it looks natural. Then we're painting a bunch of white and yellow white flowers using white and yellow deep. One last element we're adding here is a horse. Oh, I've been wanting to paint a horse, but for this, it's gonna be a small one. But maybe in the next setups or painting, I'll paint a bigger and detailed one. I just love horses. Who else loves horses? Let me know in the comments. Painting them in a small scale is pretty easy. It doesn't need to have a lot of detail. We are just using burnt umber for the overall shape of the horse. Mix a bit of black to paint a layer of the shaded areas, black for the darkest parts and the tail. And lastly are some highlights around the face and neck on the left side and on the body. And our cover painting is now done. Let's write our June title over here in brown using the fine liner tip of this Ohuhu dual brush pen. I printed this calendar with colors that match the painting. I already made a one big calendar layout instead of printing and cutting the boxes individually because why not? But of course, if you don't have a printer, you can just use brush pens or any coloring markers you have. Then we will be writing the date's title on the same upper right corner and add these ripped paper in peach color around the corners just to have something to fill those empty spaces. And then I wrote the days and dates on the calendar itself off camera. You already know how I did that. Alright, that finishes our cover and calendar spread for June. It's time to move on to the next blank page and paint another barn illustration. It's still gonna be a red barn, but this time we won't be applying a yellow underpainting to show you an example of how it looks like without it. So we'll go ahead and fill the walls with our barn with the same red color. You can notice here that I went less opaque towards the bottom. I didn't load my brush with a lot of paint because there will be some greenery here anyway, so I don't need to cover it as much as the upper area. I'm also lightening some parts again with a thin layer of white and move on to painting the roof with a mix of black, burnt umber, yellow ochre, red, and white. Then we're also using the same colors to paint the porch or the covering on the entrance, but I started with a light layer first and went back to it after adding the shadows of the walls. So it's pretty much the same process except for the underpainting, and you can also do a different barn design that you like. And after that, I went back again to where I left off, which is a roof and the entrance to add more shadows and dimension. There's also gonna be a little bale of hay on the entrance that we're painting with light yellow and brown. I go back and forth with these parts because I'm waiting for some areas to dry to paint another layer. For example, I painted the shadows of the walls just a minute ago, and I need to paint the details too, but I don't want them to look muddy, so I gotta wait a little bit and just work on other areas for the meantime. And when our barn is done, we can paint some trees and greeneries around using the same green shades to make the illustrations look cohesive. But it's also okay to mix other shades of green sometimes when you run out of paint. Well, you can try to achieve the same shade or close to the ones we used in the previous illustration, but it's not a big deal anyway. Just paint and go by your own preference, cohesive or not, as long as you enjoy the process. So I'm kind of doing a loose technique here where I'm just doing little blobs of green shades, and I tried to put the darker shade a layer behind the lighter ones for the shadowed areas, while also not overly stacking the colors or putting a lot of layers. I always go with this technique when it comes to elements of nature like this. Then we also paint the pathway using yellow ochre and burnt sienna. Okay, so the spaces below will be where I'm going to write my goals for the month. I cut out some pieces of this peach colored paper for 3 goals and draw some lines for the writing spaces using brown fine liner. Then we are writing our goals title on the space above our painting. Up next is my habit tracker. I cut out 4 boxes of these colored papers as well, and each box should fit a mini calendar tracker. So we're just gluing them here and align them vertically and draw grid lines for each. We then write the days of the week and the habits I want to track above each box. Now we're gonna cut this into a Dutch door and flip to the back side to add more colored papers. I have them in the same colors too and a bit bigger in size. So the idea here is I'm supposed to have 2 Dutch doors, but I already made a sketch in here and I didn't want to resketch it again. So I thought of a solution, which is to fold them in half and glue 2 colors together. We have blue and red and yellow and green. Then we're going to attach them to our pages. Problem solved! Yes, I need 4 of them because they are for my weekly tasks and each color is for 1 week. So I'm going to use a different weekly layout and system. Previously, I always do daily boxes. I forgot what this method is called, but for this month, I will be listing all my tasks for the week on the left side and the days of the week with columns on the right side. So I'm going to put a check mark or my bullet keys on the day I get to start, in progress, or complete a certain task. If you're like me who have repeated tasks or tasks that take some days to work on, this layout might work for you so you don't have to write them multiple times, and you can list more tasks you need to do as the week goes by. I tried to do a demo here using a pencil and it's quite hard to see, but I hope you got the idea. Then we're just writing the task's title on the top left and we're going to do another painting. We're gonna use washi tapes this time to mask both sides and the bottom and just leave the top open. We begin our painting from the grassland using our yellowish green, leaf green, and dark olive green. Okay, I'm just naming these shades by my own, but yeah, you get it. I also don't have a calculated way of doing it. I just pick up paint and mix them until I get my desired shade. Obviously, there's a chicken here, so we are gonna skip that and show the sketch as much as we can so we have a nice guide later. And I'm also holding the palette like this to show you how I mix my colors in the middle of the setup. I think it's normal to hold it like this, like a painter would, but it just saves more energy, you know, since I'm working on a desk. But I also understand that this helps you to see more of my process in terms of mixing paints. So I'll try to show more of that in the next videos. But when I first started using gouache, one of the things I disliked about it in the past is the amount of time I spend mixing colors, because I don't understand color theory. Like, what colors make up this color? And I used to rush a lot, like I wanted the painting to be done already. So now that the burden of impatience just lifted off of me, and I just take my time now. I even started this setup earlier than I usually do, but I finished it like 10 days later. We started with the base of the grassland and we move on to painting the sky and clouds. We're using a mix of turquoise blue and white for the sky, and as for the clouds, we are cleaning our brush a bit with water, and we're still going to have a tinge of blue from the sky paint on our brush, but we're going to pick up this used white paint on our palette, so it's not pure white now. We're gonna load our brush with this and apply it on the middle and edges of the clouds, and apply it on the middle and edges of the clouds near the bushes, and add some shadows by mixing a bit of red, blue, and white. We will not paint the whole clouds with this because we want the edges around the blue sky to be the whitest side, and it's easier to achieve that without any other paint behind, and we're going to make use of the color of our paper for that later. Then we're going to clean our brush really well this time. You can also change your paint water to a clean one so there's no other color on your brush. Then we're going to pat it dry and pour a fresh white paint on our palette. We want to use just a damp to almost dry brush to pick up our white paint and apply it on the edges by smudging it to create a soft cloud-like texture. We also apply white on top of the darker shades to kind of blend the colors together to create a gradient. Again, we are using an almost dry brush because if it's too wet, it's going to lift the paint that's already on the paper. I also extended the sky more towards the task's title, so it looks similar to the other paintings where there are no masks, and we are also painting little subtle clouds here. If it's too streaky, you can use your fingers to soften them a bit. It works like a miracle. Next, we are painting our fence with a base of yellow ochre and white mix and layer with burnt umber and black using our detail brush. We don't need to paint all the way down because we're going to paint some leaves here and they're gonna cover them anyway. So yes, we are painting leaves, and in this angle you want to start with the leaves in the background first instead, which is darker because there's little light coming in. I started with the lighter ones, but I soon realized it and picked up a darker shade of green to paint the leaves under. Afterwards, we can paint on top of them with a brighter green and some tall grasses. Now we can focus on our chicken. We are using this off-white color by mixing white and a hint of yellow ochre and burnt umber for the lighter parts of the feather. Then we layer the yellow ochre and burnt umber. It's like close to the color of the fence, and paint the rest of its feathers. For the head and beak, we are using red. I mixed it with white initially, but it looked too muted, so I layered it again with just red and painted the eye and details with red and burnt umber. I went back to the feathers again to add more depth by painting black to some areas and showing more whites, especially to the tail. And lastly are the claws that we are painting with yellow ochre and black. The end result looked like the chicken is blowing the sky in a first glance. But that's it for these goal, habit tracker, and weekly task spreads. It's time to flip again to the next page and paint one last illustration for our June setup. I decided to do a full page painting and I masked all the sides with a washi tape. Then we start with a yellow underpainting again for the barn behind, as well as on some parts of our little lamb on the center. I'm so excited to paint this one, but right now we work on the barn in the background, and since we already have an idea how we paint this, I'll just talk about something else. As you might know, or if you're new here, I didn't show up here with new videos or monthly setup for the past couple months. I wasn't technically out of social media, but I was busy doing someone else's business. God's business. I have been very vocal with my faith in the past couple years, and I had a breakthrough last year where I finally completely free of things that I struggled with in a very young age and other issues that caused, heaviness in my heart, which really held me back from shining brighter for Jesus. Like, we say we're Christians, but behind closed doors, we struggle with anger, pride, anxiety, offense, shame, condemnation, negative thoughts, and most of us today normalize struggling with these things or being okay to live with these things, especially as believers. It's easy to say, just don't be angry, don't be offended, don't be prideful. Well, you can do that on the outside. I used to do that outside, but you are screaming internally. What's inside is saying otherwise. We all have goodness in us, but it's hard to be truly Christ-like with these impurities in the heart. It has to be filtered out to represent Him correctly to other people. And we want them to see Jesus in us, but they really can't when we easily get triggered with these. That's why so many people are hurt by religion and the teachings of the old wine, the old things, the old mindset. They don't want that. And that's true. I don't want it either. What they really need to see is Jesus and who He really is. Jesus in His fullness. And that's the part where I had another breakthrough, especially in the area of character. You might see me as nice, generous, calm on the outside, but I would be angry to the point that I'd cry because I don't want to be angry. And I would struggle in other areas too, such as judgment, impatience, bitterness, pride, hateful thoughts. I'd squirm. I just couldn't do it with my own effort. I was going on circles, doing all these religious things, which are not working at all. It's like you're wrestling with your own flesh and you're beating yourself up, But finally, I never imagined that it's possible to be completely free from these things, that even when you get attacked, you don't struggle on the inside anymore. And it's so easy to reject the devil's lies compared to before. This is all because God led me to a ministry that carries and embraces His power. And there is a leader that truly embodies the character of Jesus. I really told God, Lord, I want to be as pure as this person. So I humbled myself to be delivered from these impure things, and I got transformed with ease because of the anointing and the anointed teachings. This is in addition to the complete freedom from years of struggle due to the inappropriate content I got exposed to as a child. I have a leader that I look up to now because they're so humble, pure, and Christ-like. And you can literally see Jesus in her. I'm not kidding. Go take a look. I leave a link of my leader's account and my church, so go check it out. Go check it out, bro. It didn't take long for me to be transformed in the level of purity I am in now. It's like I accelerated from first grade to college. It's supernatural as that when His power or anointing is present. I started taking the Christian life seriously in 2022, but I still struggled during those years because I was doing the religious ways instead of the Jesus way. But I sought Him more, and thankfully, God is not sleeping and He led me to the right ministry. Bro, I've never felt this new level of freedom, I'm telling you. His burden is truly light, and I know there's a kind of peace that comes when you first surrender your life to Jesus, and I really thought before that was it. But no, man, there is more. There is more. It's like heaven on earth. There's a greater measure of peace and joy and abundance when we embrace Jesus in His fullness, which includes His power, His anointing that heals the sick, casts demons out, and raises the dead. And this is what is happening in the church I'm planted in right now, called Fivefold Church. Jesus is healing the sick, casting out demons, and even raising the dead in this ministry. Yes, you heard that right. He actually did it again the week before Easter Sunday. It's like a modern Lazarus. You know, those stories that we read in the Bible, it's coming alive, bro. And that's also one of the reasons I wasn't able to upload my own content in the past 2 months, because I was dedicating my time more on sharing the kingdom content. The whole Lent season felt like a very special and significant season for me to be really serving and contributing more in His work, because people must know. I was like the Samaritan woman in the well where I met Jesus, and only Him knows what I went through that nobody else knows. And I know for sure that this is Jesus. The Spirit that set me free completely is moving in this place at 5F. I initially intend to do is filling my own buckets, which is a symbol of receiving miracles for myself and family, my own business, and my art. But in those days, I made a decision to drop and leave my buckets and run to others and preach that the real Jesus is here. His burning love and power is here, and invite as many people as I can to meet Him in this place. My bucket can wait. I just know He already filled it for me to overflow when I come back for it. And this channel right here is an example. Making YouTube videos is one of my main sources of income and a channel where I receive commission from brand affiliates. I don't have like a regular corporate job. And in those 2 months, I wouldn't expect any earnings. But guess what? Apparently, one of my shorts videos got 80,000 views in those 2 months that I wasn't making any new content, which gave me ×4 of my average earnings in a brand affiliate. You can go check my channel in the shorts tab. You can see that never happened to me before. It can only be God. Our leader in our church would always say, when you take care of God's business, He will take care of yours, especially when you are working on an anointed ground, not just any ground. It's true that God provides, but there's a greater measure of what we need, such as provision, when we follow His principles of receiving through His true anointed servants, carrying high level of anointing, which no other ministry has taught me, but only at Fivefold Church. So now I'm happily back here, taking on more responsibilities and wear more hats to advance His kingdom. And it's really my heart for you to hear and know what Jesus and His anointing can do for you and where you can receive them too. It's only up to us whether to humble ourselves and receive. Revival is right here and now. What a life, right? You can have that too. This is the life Jesus wants and has paid for us on the cross. I can talk about this all day, but what I painted here now is a depiction of myself, of where I am in this life. I'm just so happy and joyful and free and well taken care of by my earthly shepherd, and I am safe and protected in a strong spiritual house, just like this house behind the lamp. It's a new level of peace and love. I feel like a child again. I don't have anything to worry about, which makes me look cute and happy, just like this little lamb right here. Alright, the next pages will be for my ministry notes. So these are where I'm gonna write down some notes of the teachings at my church every Sunday. And I'm using a simple layout with colorful tabs. And on the title cover, I'm also writing a powerful verse from John 10:27-28. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish. And before we end this video, I have an exciting news. Some of you already know this, but in case you missed it, I recently updated my shop with new products. I released the Refined Reflections and Quintessential Afternoon collections. There are new sticker designs, art prints, notepads, and I also made new additions like decorative papers and bookmarks. You can save over 10% when you get the whole collection, so feel free to check them out on my website at tottocharizze.com. And if you're not in social media all the time but want to be up to date with the latest launches or designs, definitely sign up to my email list that you can find on the footer of the website. Thank you so much for your continued support in my small business, and I speak blessings to you all. And yeah, that finally completes our summer barn themed June 2025 bullet journal setup. And we are almost at the end of this video, so let's do a quick flip through of all the pages we did together. I hope you enjoyed this plan with me video and gave you some new ideas and inspiration, or maybe paintings to practice on your own monthly setup. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and I hope you'll check out my new collections and products at my shop website, bytherese.com. Also, please leave a like and let's stay connected by subscribing to this channel, and keep yourself notified by tapping the bell for more art and bullet journaling videos from me. Thank you so much for your time listening and watching. Take care and have an amazing month ahead. I love you all. Bye!